Hello, and welcome to another fabulous episode of My Orgasmic Life. Today's episode is brought to you by Tickle.life. Tea. So, hello, I've missed you. It's been like a couple of weeks since I've done an episode. So, I've been digital. I've been like working hard on my my empire. On my website. So, I should be able to launch those soon. So stay tuned. Okay. So in case you don't know who I am, I'm Gaia Morrissette. I'm your hostess with the mostess. And today we're going to do part one. So as you know, I started doing every month, I do one topic where I break it into two parts. Part one is available for you, the podcast listening, the YouTube listener. And then part two is exclusive content that's only available for my Patreon, my patrons of Patreon. So if you're like, what? Just so you, FYI, full disclosure. So today we're going to talk about penises. And what do we do when our partner, who's the owner of the penis, is struggling with rapid ejaculation or premature ejaculation? So that's what we're going to talk about today. And I've talked about this from the penis owner's perspective. But I've never talked about this from the person on the receiving end of the penis. And what their journey is and what's going on for them. So that's what we're going to talk about today. All right, how do I want to start this? Okay, so I'll start with a story. So years ago, my partner at the time was struggling with rapid ejaculation or premature ejaculation. First of all, why is it called rapid ejaculation? So it used to be called premature ejaculation, so PE. And the reason behind why in the industry we've changed it to rapid ejaculation, because premature for what? What's the mature rate? When is the right time? So that's why we've changed it so that it's more accurate. Also, it's really important to be like lasting longer. What is lasting longer? And lasting longer in, overall in the act of sex, like sexy time, versus in the act of, say, intercourse or penetrative sex. So the average time of penetrative stimulus is like 3 to 5 minutes long. So it's not very like in our perspective of like that's not a very long time. So if you are, if your partner is ejaculating before then that would be considered rapid ejaculation or premature ejaculation. However, I like to frame it as, being able to ejaculate when everybody is ready for that and everybody is excited about that. Being able to more about, instead of being lasting longer or your partner lasting longer, being more like lasting for as long as everybody wants it to last. And so that's one part of this. So we're all on the same page here. Okay. So I'm not when I talk about suggestions or, solving the problem that's not serving you. I'm not talking about a time frame of lasting longer. I'm talking about lasting for as long as everybody wants it to last. And again, I want to premise is, if you've listened to anything I do, I always come from this philosophy. Successful sexual experience is about, this is the only goal. We let go of goals. We let go of expectations. Is one of the major solutions to all most sexual dysfunction or sexual unsatisfaction comes from the way that we've been taught to have sex, which is an expectational, goal-oriented experience. Okay, so that's what kind of sets us all up for failure. So to be able to change that mindset into giving and receiving pleasure. That's it. That's the only expectation. And pleasure can come in many, many, many forms. All right. So that's another piece of the puzzle of like surrendering and letting go of these constructs and these concepts that, so what is a healthy sexual experience is not kissing, groping, maybe oral, intercourse. When the ejaculation happens, the sexy time is over. Okay, so that sequence of events, and if that's how you have sex, then you're not alone. Most of the population has sex that way. So don't feel bad about that. Okay, but that sets the premise that sets everybody up for failure and everybody up for being upset and disappointed. Okay. Story time. Once upon a time, long time ago. And you're like, what? It's not long time ago. I am 45. I'm turning 46 in in less than a month. It's a long time ago when I was back in my 20s. My partner at the time and I were struggling with him ejaculating sooner than I wanted him to do. And so it wasn't about him ejaculating really, really quick. That was the problem. It was the timing of when he was ejaculating. So back then, I was allergic to, and I still am, but they have options now. I was allergic to latex. And, I couldn't be on the pill because I had a nasty reaction to it. And so, and I do not recommend this on any level. Okay. So I was fluid bonded with my partner at the time. And, we had been together for a really long time. And, we were struggling with, so what would happen is that I would be having an orgasm, which would stimulate him to want to have an ejaculation at the same time that I was having an orgasm. But the problem is that he would have to withdraw so that he didn't ejaculate in me. And because back then there wasn't barrier options as there are now, so he would withdraw, and as he would withdraw, just as I was just about to have my orgasm, so that was a particular problem, and so I would be angry. All right, and then again, I'm going to share some honesty with you guys, right? Like full disclosure. And again, I do not support the withdrawal method as protective from pregnancy. Do you know that there's a possibility of pregnancy during that process? And again, STIs are not, you're not protected from any STIs whatsoever. Okay. So that's, I needed to say that. But back then there wasn't a lot of options. And again, that was a really long time ago. So what would happen is he would ejaculate. He would feel bad because now I was angry. I didn't want to be angry. I'd already had a bunch of orgasms because I was very orgasmic. But it was in that moment where I was just about to go into an orgasm. It didn't matter that I had 5 or 10 earlier. It didn't matter. It was in that moment of him pulling out, me not feeling satisfied, and then me feeling angry inside it myself. Even though I tried not to lash out at him, it still was there. You could feel it. You could feel it I'm incredibly expressive. And so everything that I feel comes on my face, whether I want to or not to mention my body language. So what ended up happening is that it started to get into his head that he was failing, that he wasn't satisfying me, that the sex was no good, that, he couldn't, master his ejaculation, all of these things. And so then it started to create this little spiral of like him not being good enough, me being unsatisfied. That started to affect how we interacted with each other. So then we started, okay, well, how do we, we started down the road of like, well, how do we, change how he ejaculates? What I didn't know back then was that, that this is what I didn't know that I know now, is that it didn't matter. Like, the truth is that he could have ejaculated and then he could have pleased me and I could have just let go of that one orgasm, number one. Number two, and that it didn't really matter, right? But I didn't know that because I was young and no one taught me anything about this stuff. So what ended up happening is we started on this journey about fixing him instead of it just being like, it's not a big deal, all right? And which really, really fucked our relationship. I think it seriously damaged our relationship. It damaged his self-worth and self-esteem. Like all sorts of things, bad shit happened because of that. So, we started down the road of like him mastering, it was his fault, and then him mastering his ejaculation. And not from a good place though, not because it was like, oh, he wanted to have more orgasmic possibilities. And, I wanted him to explore pleasure, and like, not from a good place. It was from a, you need to fix this because you're broken and I want you to not come while I'm having my orgasm. Come after my orgasm's done. Wait like 3 seconds. So looking back on that and talking about that, I'm not very proud of that. But that was, at the same time, that's all I knew. And that's where I was sitting. And that's how I felt, right? And this is the piece as the person who's on the receiving end of the penis, all right? And this receiving end of around ejaculation. What your expectations and what it means is a really big deal to get sorted out. So as the receiver, it's really important to stop blaming. And also to be able to have conversations about it. Like I felt bad that I was angry that he ejaculated in the moment when I was having an orgasm and he ruined my orgasm. I was mad. And then I felt bad that I was mad because like I shouldn't, I shouldn't be greedy. And I felt like I was wrong for the way that I was feeling. And I couldn't really just communicate with him and say like, hey, I know that this has nothing to do, like, it's not your fault. And like, this is how I would handle it differently now, right? Like, it was not your fault. It's not your fault. Let's just come up with some new ways of like having another, okay, so, you ejaculate and then I'm not done. So you have your ejaculation and then we can start next round. And that feeling that need to be penetrated at the moment, I got lots of toys. So, if there needs to be a reprieve time, where the penis is, getting, recovering, that's fine. There's fingers, there's toys, there's all sorts of things that can be utilized so I can feel that feeling of penetration. So that was my experience. And throughout my life, I've had more experiences like that because, not everybody can master their ejaculation, and at the same time, you know, those experiences are different for me now, right? Like if I have an experience like that, I'm like, oh well, clean up in aisle 3. All right, let's continue. It doesn't mean because I don't move from this place of that this is the end of the sexual experience. That's just like it doesn't really matter when the ejaculation happens. If the ejaculation happens, all it matters is that we're exploring pleasure together. And so if I don't feel like I'm satisfied, my pleasure isn't finished, then there's lots of ways that we can explore that pleasure together. Now, what typically happens though is that there's a disappointment, there's a frustration, there's an anger, whether that's because it happened in the middle of your orgasm, whether that happened before your orgasm, before you were able to have an orgasm. And then the reason what the frustration is really about is the fact that it means because of the way that we've been taught, it means that sexy time is over and you're not satisfied, and the other partner and your partner got to get off, but you didn't get to get off in the way that you wanted to or when you wanted to. And it's okay that you feel that way. Like it's okay that you have a moment of disappointment. But what is not okay is to blame the other person and say that it's their fault. That's the part that's not okay. The other part of that is to not talk about it, is to say like, hey, this is, you know, to be able to say, hey, this is not your fault. However, this is how I feel about this. Can we come up with, you know, let's have a conversation about it. That, you know, how do you feel about it, right? And that your partner have your partner or partners have an opportunity for them to talk about their feelings about it, like what happens and why they get so excited at that moment, and you know, what do they need to do, and you know, is there some, you know, different ways that we can, change up how we're having sex time, so that we feel both satisfied and you know, all these things. Okay, so again, it's not about lasting. The reason we are attached to lasting longer is because we have said that when ejaculation happens, that sex is over. You know, there's this construct, this concept that it's over. The fun is done when the goo flows. That's what we've been taught. So the key in this is to make sure that we start to change how we look at that, and how we need to be able to talk to each other and have conversations about it, which is what I'm going to get into in part 2. Part 2, I'm going to dive into how do we have the conversations about, you know, to your partner who owns a penis, how do you have those conversations, not just about rapid ejaculation, but also erectile dysfunction and not being able to ejaculate. So that's what part 2 is going to be all about. All right. So anything else that I want to leave you with? The key, okay, so here's what I really just, once again, here's the key. 1, it's okay for you to feel what you feel. 2, it's okay to, have your feelings, share your feelings, but it's not okay to blame the other person, okay? It's really important to come up with alternatives. What can some of the alternatives to that experience so that everybody feels happy and satisfied about it? And, for your partner who happens to be, having, these experiences, it's really important to be supportive and to give them space to be able to talk about their experience with it, so that it's not this deadly silence. And that's what typically ends up happening, is there's this deadly silence, because we've been taught one, we're not supposed to feel these feelings. Two, we're not supposed to talk about it because we could devastate our partner, and the ego of the penis owner is so fragile that if we talk about it, we could destroy them forever. These are some of the beliefs that we've been kind of taught to believe. And all of that does, what that does is it makes it feel this like intense energy that you could cut with a knife. And what that ends up happening is that you end up in a sexless relationship, because who wants your arousal levels drop? Who wants to be in that experience? Because it's uncomfortable. It feels awful. It feels awful for everybody who's involved in that moment. It's like, awkward. What do I do with this? And I think it's also really, really important is to be able to have a friend, a confidant that you can unfiltered share your thoughts and your feelings about this with. And I think that's really, really important, because it's important to be able to have your feelings in this situation, but it's also incredibly important that we don't place blame. And if we're in a moment where we're frustrated and we're angry, we don't want to project those frustration and anger onto our partner, because that's not fair, right? It's not their responsibility. It's not their fault. Just like, you don't want them to project their stuff onto you, right? And make it your fault and there's something wrong with you, okay? So when we have those conversations with our partner, which is why I'm going to do a whole part 2 of this, which you can get when you become a patron of my Patreon, which is like $5 a month. Starting at, $5 a month. I will talk about how do you set that up so that it's a successful conversation. All right. But how you feel about it, how you're frustrated about it, how you're angry about it, all of those things, yes, that's how you feel. And you need to process that. Like, you need to have those feelings. You need to process those feelings. You need to, so that you can release those feelings, so that you can come back to the table and come up with have conversations and come up with solutions. But suppressing it doesn't fix it, doesn't serve you, doesn't make it go away. It just builds up resentment. So it's important to have a confidant, a friend that you can be like, oh my God. I'm so annoyed. I'm so frustrated. Fuck. Right? Somebody that you can share that with. All right. If you don't have somebody in your life that you can share that with, then you need to be able to at least vent and say all the things that you need to say in private. So whether that's while you're driving in your car and letting it out, whether that's talking at the mirror so you feel like you're talking to somebody, or you're using some other anger release techniques. Another really good one is like going and throwing rocks at the river and bedding, like, while your feelings and throwing the rocks. So there's lots of ways to get that frustration and that anger out, but it's important to release it. Don't just shove it down, because it will fester. Okay. All right. I think that's it. That's all. So I hope you enjoyed today's episode. Make sure that you check out Tickle.life's episode. I host Tickle.life's podcast, so that's always juicy, and I interview all sorts of wonderful guests about their own personal adventures. And you can now, to find all the things, I do so many things. I teach, I train, I facilitate, I do sexual wellness, I do BDSM, I do so many things. I now have a beautiful hub. This is what I've been working on. I have a beautiful hub where you can go to one spot. All you need to do to find everything to end up wherever you need to be. You can visit me at GaiaMorrissette.com. And you can find all the things. all the places. It's the hub. It's the entry point into my world, to the empire. And don't forget to listen to my Orgasmic Life. Have a juicy day, and may it be filled with possibilities and honest, real, and pleasure conversations. Bye-bye. Mwah.